Las Vegas, August 13th, 1973. The Hilton showroom was still shaking from the sound of 2,100 screaming fans when a small figure slipped past security. Elvis was wiping the sweat from his collar, unaware the night was about to change forever. It wasn't a fan, it was his daughter, and cameras captured everything that followed. Las Vegas, August 13th, 1973. The Hilton International shimmered like it was built from liquid fire. Outside, the desert heat hadn't dropped below 90 degrees, even past midnight. Limousines lined the driveway. Fans clutched flowers, scarves, and camera flashes that flickered like lightning against the mirrored glass. Inside, the showroom pulsed. A sold-out crowd of 2,100 people who had come to see one man. Elvis Presley had just finished his midnight show. The sound still hung in the air. A mix of applause, laughter, and faint sobs from women in the front rows. The band packed up their instruments while stagehands wiped sweat from the mic stand. From the hallway beyond the curtain came the faint echo of Elvis's footsteps. Slow, heavy, deliberate. The gold lame suit shimmered beneath the backstage bulbs. He was still catching his breath, shoulders rising and falling as if the whole performance had been carved from his lungs. "Hell of a crowd tonight," muttered Charlie Hodge, his longtime friend and rhythm guitarist. Elvis just nodded, eyes distant. The world saw a king bathed in spotlight. But back here, under flickering fluorescent tubes, he looked human, even fragile. The dressing room door creaked open. Elvis removed his sunglasses and dropped into a leather chair. Sweat darkened the collar of his white jumpsuit. He poured water from a glass decanter, the ice clinking like tiny cymbals. On the vanity lay the evidence of a long tour. A stack of fan letters, a silk scarf with lipstick marks, and a single Polaroid from that night's show. In the mirror, he studied his reflection, the sequins, the fatigue beneath the eyes. Is this what they all see? He wondered. A man or a monument? Behind him, Charlie tried to lighten the mood. You broke another attendance record, E. That's 4 nights in a row. Elvis smiled faintly. Records don't mean much when you're running out of breath, son. He wasn't being dramatic. The pressure of performing 2 shows a night was starting to weigh. His heart pounded harder than the drums on Suspicious Minds. The sound of the crowd was thunderous, but what came after always felt hollow. A low hum from the stage speakers leaked through the wall, the lingering echo of adoration. Then silence. For Elvis, silence was the hardest part. Have you ever stood in front of thousands, only to feel alone the moment the lights go out? That was his world now. A cycle of noise and quiet, applause and ache. Outside the dressing room, a janitor rolled a cart past, the faint rattle of wheels blending with the air conditioner's hum. The staff was used to this, the quiet melancholy after an Elvis show. Nobody disturbed him once the door closed. Nobody, except the one person about to. Charlie was halfway through folding a towel when he heard it. A soft, uncertain knock, once then again. 3 small taps. Not the firm, rhythmic knock of a stage manager, nor the casual tap of a friend. It was lighter, almost hesitant. Elvis looked up. You expecting someone? Charlie shook his head. No, sir. Everyone's cleared out. The knock came again, this time followed by a whisper. Faint, but distinct. Daddy? Elvis froze. The glass slipped from his hand and clinked against the table. Charlie blinked. Did she just say? Elvis was already on his feet. The corridor camera flickered, its black and white lens catching a shadow moving just beyond the frame. What it captured next would become one of the most replayed moments in fan history, because that wasn't a fan. It wasn't staff. It was Lisa Marie, 7 years old, holding something folded in her hands, and she had come to give her father a surprise that no crowd could ever match. What she was carrying would make the king of rock and roll kneel and bring the entire Hilton staff to tears. Charlie Hodge reached the door first, half expecting a fan who'd slipped past security. But when it swung open, the hallway light revealed a small figure standing perfectly still. A little girl with long brown hair, clutching a teddy bear that looked like it had been hugged halfway to pieces. Lisa Marie Presley. She'd flown in unexpectedly with Priscilla that afternoon, hidden from the press by a side entrance. Only a handful of people knew she was even in Las Vegas. And now, here she was, in the hallway, barefoot, with a folded drawing held tightly against her chest. Lisa? Elvis's voice cracked as he stepped closer. The cameras meant for security caught the scene in grainy black and white. The king of rock and roll, speechless, eyes wide, cape brushing the floor as he knelt in front of his daughter. No audience, no spotlight, just the quiet hum of the air vent and the faint buzz of a neon exit sign overhead. Charlie looked away. Even he felt he shouldn't intrude. She said she wanted to see her daddy, murmured one of the guards later. You could hear how soft his voice got. It didn't sound like Elvis anymore. Lisa opened her hand. I made you this. Inside was a hand-drawn picture, crude, coloured in marker. It showed Elvis on stage, holding her hand beneath bright yellow lights, hearts floating above them. At the bottom, in uneven letters, don't forget me when you sing. Elvis swallowed hard. Sweetheart, he brushed his thumb over the drawing like it was made of glass. For a long moment, neither spoke. The noise of the casino outside, slot machines, laughter, clinking coins, felt a world away. The camera picked up a single tear sliding down his cheek before he tilted his head, smiling through it. You know I never could, he whispered. The teddy bear squeaked as Lisa hugged him. Elvis's cape slipped off his shoulders, pooling on the carpet like a fallen curtain. For once, the king didn't try to fix it. Have you ever seen someone famous become just human? No stage lights, no script. Just love, pure and unscripted. Charlie cleared his throat. You want me to give you two a minute? Elvis nodded. The door closed, leaving father and daughter alone. From outside, all that could be heard was the faint hum of the fluorescent bulbs, and a quiet laugh from Lisa that sounded like relief. In the years that followed, fans would read endless theories about Elvis's state of mind during those Vegas shows. Exhaustion, pressure, isolation. But this moment, captured by accident on a corner security feed, showed something no tabloid ever did. Tenderness. The man who moved millions was brought to silence by one small voice. As the footage later showed, he lifted her drawing again, held it under the vanity light, and smiled like the noise outside no longer existed. Then he said 5 words that would lead her, and the cameras, somewhere no one expected. Come on, honey, walk with me. And just like that, Elvis broke every rule of the Hilton stage protocol, taking Lisa's hand and walking her straight toward the light. The hallway beyond the dressing room smelled faintly of hairspray and warm amplifier dust. Elvis held Lisa's hand as they walked toward the mirror-lined corridor. His cape whispered against the carpet, sequins scattering reflections along the wall. Behind them, Charlie paused at the door, instinctively turning to glance at the security camera, which still blinked its red light. He'd been with Elvis for years, seen the tantrums, the exhaustion, the endless curtain calls, but never this kind of quiet. It was the stillness that comes after a storm, that fragile silence before someone says something that matters. Elvis crouched to meet Lisa's eyes. You drew this all by yourself? She nodded, proud but shy. Uh-huh. Mama helped spell the words. He smiled, folding the paper carefully like it was a letter from heaven. You know, darling, sometimes I forget what all this is for. He motioned toward the faint echo of the stage beyond the door. All that noise out there. It's big, but it don't hold a candle to this. Lisa tilted her head. Do you get scared before you sing? That question stopped him cold. No interviewer had ever dared ask that. He thought for a long time before answering. Yeah, honey, every single time. The security footage shows him chuckling then, a nervous laugh that turned into a sigh. He picked up the teddy bear she dropped, pressed its soft ear to his cheek and whispered, You keep this safe for me, all right? Daddy's got to earn his keep. For a man worshipped by millions, it was the most honest confession of his life. The dressing room's old refrigerator hummed in the corner. The sound filled the silence like a metronome keeping time. A hairdryer buzzed somewhere down the hall, then faded. The world seemed to pause. Two people inside a cocoon of light and stillness, while outside, Las Vegas continued roaring. Have you ever seen a person realize, in real time, what they've been missing? Elvis ran a hand through his hair, eyes glistening. You know, I used to pray someone would remind me what all this meant. Didn't expect it'd be you tonight. Lisa smiled and handed him the drawing again. Then don't forget me when you sing. That line hit him harder the second time. He folded the picture, tucked it carefully inside his jumpsuit pocket, close to his heart, and said, "Then you come with me. Let's remind them both of us are still real." Charlie could hardly believe what he heard. Elvis never brought family into public view, not since the divorce. But tonight, rules didn't matter. The cameras, still rolling quietly, caught him standing and holding her hand as the hallway lights flickered. He turned toward the exit leading back to the main stage. The distant roar of the audience was fading, unaware their night was far from over. The image, Elvis in a white cape, Lisa in her tiny sandals, looked almost cinematic. Two silhouettes walking toward a doorway filled with light. When they stepped through that door, even the most seasoned Hilton staff froze, because the king wasn't supposed to go back out there, and certainly not with her. The hallway leading back to the Hilton showroom stretched like a tunnel of gold and echo. Stagehands froze as Elvis and Lisa passed, her small hand gripping his fingers. The heavy door behind them thudded shut, muting the world they'd just left. The solitude of backstage replaced by the murmur of an audience still half-seated, half-leaving, buzzing with post-show energy. Security guard Jerry Schilling blinked in disbelief. "Sir, you can't, the stage is closed." Elvis stopped just long enough to meet his eyes. "Jerry, tonight it ain't about the stage." The flicker of a neon sign painted their shadows on the wall. The air smelled of sweat, perfume, and the faint metallic tang of microphone cords. Up ahead, the band was still packing up. The sound of a guitar string snapping rang out like a gunshot. The noise turned every head. And then they saw him, the king himself, returning, still in his cape, but now with his daughter in tow. Charlie Hodge whispered, "Oh Lord, he's really doing it." The audience noise shifted. People in the front rows noticed movement in the wings. The house lights hadn't yet come up, so the room remained bathed in twilight blue stage glow. A low murmur rippled through the crowd, confusion turning to recognition. He stepped out slowly, guiding Lisa onto the stage floorboards still warm from the spotlights. The band froze mid-motion, unsure whether to keep packing or play. Elvis smiled at them, that half smirk that said, "Follow me or get left behind." And they did. Within seconds, the soft opening chords of "You'll Never Walk Alone" filled the air. The spotlight operator, realizing what was happening, swung the beam instinctively toward the center of the stage. Lisa flinched at the sudden brightness. Elvis bent down and whispered, "Don't be scared, honey. Just look at me." The audience gasped as the light hit them. For a moment, nobody clapped. Nobody screamed. The Hilton showroom, notorious for being loud, drunk, and uncontainable, went dead silent. Imagine being there. 2,100 people holding their breath as father and daughter stood beneath a single beam of light. Elvis took the mic. His voice trembled on the first line, softer, rawer than usual. "When you walk through a storm." Lisa pressed her teddy bear against her chest. Elvis's tone deepened, each lyric vibrating through the room like a heartbeat. Charlie later said, "I never saw him sing like that again. It wasn't for the crowd. It was for her." The moment cracked something open. People in the audience began crying quietly. Some held hands. Even the casino manager, usually stone-faced, had tears forming beneath his glasses. Have you ever seen love make the noise stop? The kind of love that rewrites the rules, even for kings. Elvis finished the final line with his voice breaking. "And you'll never walk alone." The The room erupted, not in cheers, not at first, but in an ovation that sounded like relief. Lisa turned to him, whispering something only he could hear. The cameras picked it up faintly. "You didn't forget me." He smiled, kissed her forehead, and turned back toward the audience. Then he did something no one expected. He leaned into the mic and said, "She's why I sing, always has been." Flashbulbs went off like lightning. Crew members froze, unsure whether to step in or just watch. Even the security feed, meant to record for safety, caught the shimmer of tears on his face. But no one in that crowd, not even Elvis, knew the moment was being filmed, and that the tape capturing it all would vanish for more than 30 years. The applause rolled through the Hilton showroom like a thunderclap trapped in glass. Elvis stood motionless at center stage, still holding Lisa's hand. Cameras flashed, their bulbs bursting white across the dark sea of faces. For a few seconds, it was impossible to tell whether he was overwhelmed or transformed. Then he spoke. "I'll always sing for her," he said quietly into the microphone, his voice trembling through the speakers. The sound technician would later claim the meter spiked higher on that line than any note of the night. The audience didn't cheer right away. They simply stared. A legend had just admitted the one thing that mattered more than music. The band behind him exchanged glances. They'd seen him give countless encores, but never like this. Never so still. Drummer Ronnie Tutt leaned forward, whispering to Charlie, "He's off script." Charlie smiled. "Let him be. He means it." Elvis turned to Lisa, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "You ready to help Daddy finish?" She nodded, the teddy bear still in her arms. The band picked up the final refrain of "You'll Never Walk Alone." This time, the entire crowd joined in, voices cracking, harmonies melting into one great human sound. It wasn't a concert anymore, it was communion. When the song ended, Elvis looked out across the room. "Thank you for letting me share her with you," he said. "That's my heart right there." He handed Lisa the microphone. Gasps rippled through the hall. She didn't sing, she just whispered, "Hi." The crowd laughed through tears. That one word, barely audible, was enough. Have you ever witnessed a promise so pure it silenced thousands? Backstage staff peeked from the curtains. Even casino dealers on break crept in to watch. For once, security didn't stop them. Everyone sensed this wasn't show business anymore. When Elvis finally knelt to hug Lisa, the stage lights caught his ring, reflecting a streak of gold across the camera lens. That single flare would become iconic, an image replayed in fan documentaries for decades. He whispered something only the first few rows caught. "I'm going to make sure they never forget you." The sound crew, aware of Hilton policy forbidding private footage, still kept the cameras rolling. One of them, a young technician named Dean Merrill, tucked the reel aside, instead of archiving it with the others. "Didn't feel right to file that under security," he later recalled. It felt like history. The lights dimmed to black. The show was officially over, but nobody moved. Even the ushers, trained to guide people out efficiently, just stood there crying. Outside the showroom, fans crowded near the stage door hoping for a glimpse. They'd never know that behind those walls, the king of rock and roll had just made a vow, not to fame, not to God, but to his daughter. As the room emptied, Charlie approached Elvis quietly. "That was something, E. You sure the Colonel's gonna like that?" Elvis smiled, eyes still damp. "He don't have to like it, it's the truth." Weeks later, when that security tape was reviewed for routine storage, the reel was gone, vanished, and nobody would see that promise again. For over 3 decades, for 34 years, the reel sat buried beneath layers of forgotten tape. Hilton security rotated staff. Technicians retired, departments changed. No one realized one of those reels, labeled Cam B3, West Hall Access, held the final uncut footage of Elvis and Lisa's unscripted moment. Then, in 2007, a young archivist named Rick Stanley, nephew of one of Elvis's former bodyguards, stumbled upon a rusted metal case in the hotel's storage basement. Inside, A Betacam reel, brittle and half-faded, but still intact. Scribbled on the label in fading marker were 3 words that made him pause. Presley, backstage clip. He brushed off the dust and loaded it into an old playback deck. The first seconds were static, grey snow across the screen. Then, through the hiss of aged tape, came a flicker. Elvis's white cape, Lisa's small hand, the shimmer of stage lights. Rick leaned forward. The picture stabilized. You could hear the muffled applause, the hum of the room, and that fragile line, "I'll always sing for her." He froze. This can't be real. Rick called the Hilton Archives head immediately. Within hours, technicians gathered in the projection room. 6 people staring at a grainy black and white miracle. The air was thick with silence. No one wanted to blink and miss a second. One woman whispered, "It's like he knew this would be found." They restored the footage frame by frame. The moment when Elvis knelt and hugged Lisa, every flicker of emotion, every tremor of his voice, returned to life. Even the faint squeak of the teddy bear could be heard when the audio was cleaned. Imagine watching that. A moment thought lost to time, breathing again. When the restored clip was shown privately at Graceland later that year, Lisa sat in the back of the small screening room. The only light came from the projector beam. As the footage ended, she wiped her eyes and said softly, "He wasn't Elvis then. He was just Dad." That line became the headline for nearly every article that followed. The Guardian, Rolling Stone, even local Memphis papers ran features calling it the most human moment ever caught on a security feed. The Hilton soon agreed to donate the original reel to the Graceland Archives. Fans would later visit an exhibit displaying both the restored clip and the hand-drawn picture Lisa had given him, now faded at the edges, but perfectly preserved behind glass. Have you ever seen proof that love survives technology, distance, and time itself? It wasn't a show anymore. It was legacy caught on tape. And before the exhibit opened, one last decision had to be made: how to honor that promise on the anniversary of his final Vegas performance. August 13th, 2013, exactly 40 years to the day after that fateful night at the Las Vegas Hilton. The Graceland Archive Wing opened its newest exhibit, a softly lit corner dedicated to one unseen moment. A father, a daughter, and a promise that refused to fade. Visitors walked in silence beneath glass cases. One held Lisa's childhood drawing, still creased from where Elvis had folded it that night. The marker hearts had bled slightly into the paper, and the words, "Don't forget me when you sing," were barely legible now, but still there. Next to it, on a looped monitor, the restored footage played. The grainy black and white flicker of Elvis kneeling, Lisa's small voice, the stage lights glinting off his cape. People rarely spoke while watching. Some cried quietly. Others just stood still, hands over mouths. A small plaque beside the display read, "Las Vegas Hilton, August 13th, 1973, crowd estimate 2,100. Moment of Rediscovery, 2007, donated by Rick Stanley and Lisa Marie Presley." In a later interview, Lisa described what that space meant to her. "He was always larger than life to everyone else, but to me that night showed he was still reachable, still human." For fans, the exhibit became more than nostalgia. It became a pilgrimage. Veterans who'd attended the Hilton show returned in wheelchairs. Young fans who'd never seen Elvis alive whispered thanks as the clip played. It wasn't about celebrity anymore. It was about connection. Have you ever realized that the moments that outlive us are rarely the loudest ones? Charlie Hodge, now elderly and soft-spoken, was invited to cut the ribbon that day. He stood beside Lisa, watching the footage replay behind them. "He finally got to show the world what we always knew," he said. "The king wasn't made by the spotlight. He was made by the love that walked into his dressing room that night." Outside Graceland, a warm Tennessee wind stirred the magnolia trees. Somewhere in the distance, a speaker played the remastered recording of "You'll Never Walk Alone." People paused to listen as the final lyric echoed, "And you'll never walk alone." The exhibit remains open to this day, a living echo of that promise. Tourists still photograph the drawing, their reflections merging with the glass. Strangers, family, and legend blending into one shared story. In the end, it wasn't the stage or the crown or the flashbulbs that defined him. It was a quiet moment between a father and daughter, captured accidentally, remembered forever. The world called him the King. But that night in Vegas proved something greater. Before he was an icon, he was a dad who remembered to sing for someone he loved. Some stories fade, others hum beneath the noise for decades until love pulls them back into the light. If this moment moved you, share it forward. Not for fame, but to remind someone you love that they'll never walk alone. Because sometimes the smallest voices keep the greatest legends alive.